Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hey everybody, welcome back to another week of Astro Chat. Today it is myself, Kimberly Williams, and my lovely friend, Monica Anna, and we're going to be talking to you about the upcoming new moon in Gemini. We're looking at, let me look at my notes here real quick. We're looking at the new moon in Gemini is going to be at 26 degrees of Gemini, 43 minutes. For those of you that are following the actual degrees, it's going to be on the Saturday evening, the 17th, here in Central Time Zone, USA, at 11:36 in the evening. And that'll put it Sunday morning across the pond. Over in England, we're looking at 5:36 a.m. And of course, in Finland, 7:36 a.m. Feel free to convert it to wherever it is that you live and find yourself so you can follow along with us. Before we dive in, just a quick note, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button below. Please feel free to do so. It really helps our channel out. And be sure to also hit the notification bell. We come out twice a month. We aim to release the Saturday before the new and full moons. So that way you'll be notified when our next video comes out and you can join in our chat. Let's see. The next full moon is going to be July 3rd at 11 degrees of Capricorn. So we're looking at that 2-week window today from the 17th, 18th until July 3rd. Some highlights of things we might see happening during this time period. We may talk about most of these, but we may not get to all of them. But just to kind of make a note is that the asteroid Ceres will be going into Cancer on the 21st, followed by the Sun going into Cancer on the 21st or the 22nd, depending on where you live. We're going to see that Mercury is going into Cancer, not surprisingly, on the 27th. And we're also going to be experiencing Neptune going retrograde at the very tail end of the month on the 30th at 27 degrees of Pisces. As Monica mentioned earlier, as she and I were doing our recap, and it's a summer of retrogrades. All right, we're going to see some of them beginning now. Things that aren't retrograde, like Venus and Jupiter, are already in pre-shadow. So we're just going to be seeing it's going to be an interesting and interesting is the word for summer. I'm copying Monica now. I'm using her word, interesting. Okay, so I think those are the highlights, the things to look for. We're going to dive in and unpack some of these, but first, Monica is going to start us off talking about the energy of a Gemini new moon.
Yeah. So Gemini, the archetype, the energy really does get a bad rap. I feel like in astrological community, Geminis are the one that are getting a little bit of a short stick very often. But in general, this is the energy of curiosity. This is the energy of, I want to learn more. I want to explore more. I need to collect all the data. This is the energy of, doing new courses, talking to people, gathering the information. Maybe that's why sometimes the Gemini are considered to be the gossipers of the zodiac, but it's not because they want to spread the gossips. It's more of the information and data is what they're after. They are just naturally curious people. And with the new moon energy, for me, this is the energy of the moon that can get us moving. It's an air moon. So obviously the Gemini is an air zodiac. So it's a air new moon. So this is where our intellect, our, information can get involved, where we can say, oh, you know what? maybe I am more curious about life and maybe I want to start new course or I want to learn something else. And this is where we plant that seed. So maybe, you know, in September when the new school year starts, you'll be the one starting new college or a new course. Maybe you'll pick up, I don't know, painting or learning about the history of your own country or learning about the mythology or whatever else you can. At the new moon in Gemini, we can go within and reflect on what is the information that I need? What is the data that I need? What is the understanding that I need, but I don't have it yet? And then think about it, how over the course of the lunation, I can go after that. Who and what can help me gather the pieces? I feel like that polarity between Gemini and Sagittarius is very much Gemini collects all the information, like the puzzle pieces, and then Sagittarius takes a step back and see the big picture. But Sagittarius don't have opportunity to see the big picture unless we collect information. And this is how I feel about that polarity. In Gemini, we gather information. And to make an informed decision in whichever part of life, you know, whether in our relationship, at work, political information that we want to make, or, you know, in regards to our studies, we need to have data. And sometimes we need to have a data from two different sources. So again, Gemini as that sign of the twin, for me, it's also the sign of the crossroad, the sign of, you know, having multiple sources, right? So if I want to have opportunity to be in Sagittarius later and see the big picture, I need to be able to have information from different sources, because that will then align to create that big picture. If I only listen to one radio station, one TV news, one political party, one group of friends, whatever, you know, one homogenized voice, I can't see a big picture because I don't see what other people, other culture, other, you know, think or share about the subject. If I do go out there and I gather that, then I can step back in Sagittarius later and say, this is the information that I gathered. Those are the sources. What do I make of that? And I have then a foundation that Gemini built for me to make my own choices, to see the big picture, to gather the wisdom from the information. Again, the Gemini Sagittarius is very much information and understanding versus wisdom. They're not the same. You can have information, you can have understanding, but you don't have a wisdom of the situation. But then again, you can't go for the wisdom if you don't have the information, if you don't have the understanding, if you don't go deeper with that. And this is the new moon in Gemini. For me, it's very much like, hey, be curious, be the childlike, go down different route, go down different path that you go differently, usually, right? If there are two choices, go and explore them, because that will help you in a long run.
That's beautiful. I love your analogy of the puzzle pieces. I think that puts the polarity between Gemini and Sagittarius so well. And you're right. Like Gemini is all about asking the questions, but it isn't necessarily about discerning wisdom from the answers. Its job is to get the answers, right? And then it's later through other parts of the zodiac that we can assess and sit and be with. I think that, and I have to just be a transparency moment. I'm really biased. I love Gemini. Gemini is one of my favorite parts of my chart, Gemini rising. So it's like, it makes me very happy. And the family story is always the big joke is that my first word was why, you know, not mom or dad. I think that's a urban legend there, but still, it's that idea that
I
Gemini
love
wants
it.
to know why. Why? Why is the sky blue? Why is that way? It can break things down into those pieces, and it can just keep going
Mm.
with that breaking it down and trying to collect more. It's you know, I often feel like, you know, Gemini is the twins, but an alternate symbol might have been the squirrel. You know, maybe the squirrel is Gemini's totem animal because there's often that tendency to run this way, run that way, collect more nuts, gather more data, gather. And oh, I've got some information here. We may not complete the gathering on one thing when we're ready to go somewhere else. Um, you know, it's not unusual when we're dealing with the parts of our chart where we have a lot of Gemini energy to struggle with focus, in that area of life, because of this kind of going back and forth. It is a mutable air sign, right? And if you think about it, Libra's job is to do for others. It's cardinal. It takes action, right? What can I do for others or with others? And Aquarius is often what is the work we're going to do collectively? What is the carry on and carry through for the cause? But it's in Gemini that we have the freedom of movement, of change, of changing direction. Because sometimes when we get the answer to that question, why, we know it's time to move. I mean, in almost any program that I've been in, whether it was weight loss or whether it was how to create your website, and they always start off with the what is your why? Why are you doing this? When you're branding, what colors you're going to have? Why is an important question? It is an important word. If we don't understand why we are doing something or headed in a direction, how can we ever have direction? And so what I find is sometimes in that random process of collecting data, we can suddenly have that light bulb go off, that light bulb moment of, oh, now I understand why, which totally means I need to change direction or change the collective I'm in or change who I'm working for or change the idea, the structure in some way. So I think on the surface, it's easy to pick at that Gemini energy as, being unfocused and, not being serious and being a little too social. But the reality is there's meaning, there's an importance because in the connecting with different people and different ideas and gathering all this information, we get to come up with those momentary aha, the lightning bolt strikes, the light bulb goes off. That's because of that Gemini energy and that constant,
Mm.
relentless questioning, asking, curiosity that keeps moving us. So, yeah, I could probably talk ad nauseum about Gemini energy, but I'll stop there because it's beautiful. Oh, and my last thought is since it's a new moon, we've often talked on this podcast about new moons are times of planting seeds, of kind of holding it in. So I'm feeling like, perhaps on this new moon in Gemini each year, it's a really good question, a really good time to ask yourself, what is your why? But I'll save more for when we get to tips and tricks.
Yeah, I love that. Obviously, we touched on the new moons and full moons in this podcast, but when you're actually looking at the chart, you can see development of that energy. So you don't have to have all the answers at one new moon because it will unfold into another new moon and then unfold again. And for me, with Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius, this is that unfoldment. In Gemini new moon, that's the time of gathering data. You don't stress about seeing the big picture. You don't have to stress about seeing the discernment and thinking of whether you need that data or not. Yes, like you say, Kimberly, there might be already those kind of, oh, okay, cool. That's cool that I already gathered that. That's cool. That can be helpful. You can already see those the light bulb moments, right? Like, oh, I didn't know that I can go that path. That's an interesting information, but it's still, you still have time before the discernment of Virgo or the full picture of Sagittarius arrives. And I think for me especially, I've been actually over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking a lot about cycles and cycles in astrology and cycles of the moon. And for me, when we get in tune with those cycles, we don't trying to get a step ahead. And as much as Gemini is very airy signs, like I want to go, I want to do things, that's fine, but just do it within the space and time that you have. Don't, when you worry about like, oh, do I have enough information? Have I gathered everything? Is that going to be enough for me to make that decision? That's the worry for Virgo. That's later in autumn when you actually have opportunity to sit down and say, okay, what is it that I've gathered this year? What fruits have I grown? What things that I have to discard? Both Gemini and Virgo are ruled by Mercury. So this is the seed that we're planting that then Mercury will pick up later in a year and will go, okay, now I need to sift through that data. Now I need to do a little bit of Marie Kondo. So with the Virgo, we can do what Marie Kondo do. We can look at all the information that we gather. We can see what sparks joy and what we need to let go. And when we do that again in Virgo, we don't have to worry about the big picture. We're just using that mercurial discernment to see what is it that makes me healthy, makes me happy, makes me whole. and what is it that actually is, to the detriment of my own health, whether mental health, physical health. And then again, in Sagittarius, when we've done all those 2 steps in Sagittarius, we can then take a step back and say, I can be philosophical about it. I can see at the meaning of those information, not just the letter of the law, so to speak, but the meaning of what that information is trying to convey and what wisdom can I get out of that. And when we're talking about cycles, for me, it's important to stay within the cycle as well and go with that flow. So I don't try to do something that maybe, to be philosophical about it, maybe it's not the right time yet. There's, as they say, there is the right time and the right place, to sow and to gather. And I think with astrology and the new moon cycle and the sun cycle, it's very much getting us in tune with what is the good thing to do now. Again, I'm not saying that absolutely you can't do the discernment, this week, or editing your book this week or this month, but that, within the bigger cycle, this is not the time for it. This is the time of, spring going into the summer. This is still time of things opening up, of blossoming, of growing. And this is the time of learning about the colors and smells and, and gathering all that information. And the time to see the big picture will be in 6 months' time. And it will be interesting to have, maybe I'm already selling the tip today, but when you do your journaling on the new moon, at the Gemini new moon, and then you look in 6 months at the new moon in Sagittarius, you can compare those two, and you can see in Sagittarius, what is it that you learn now? What did you collect, and what was important to you at this moment in time, that you can get the wisdom of this period in time in the future. I hope that makes sense. Just went a little bit on a...
We're talking Gemini. We're going to wax on a bit, right? And something you said also made me realize we hadn't mentioned that, with Gemini energy, and especially a new moon in Gemini, because the new moon can put us really in touch with our unconscious side of our brain. But Gemini energy in general, right? It's linear, it's logical, it wants to think. It's very much about those how are we connecting dots in our brain? What are we thinking about? And it's multitasking. It is a sign of multitasking, and often it's a sign that is about multi-thinking. So this is often a time where I'm having a conversation with you. Meanwhile, my mind is thinking of 10 other things simultaneous. Zoom, 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 zoom. And I say that because at one point you were talking about the energy, and you said Virgo, and I think you meant Gemini when you're talking about Marie Kondo. And I'm like laughing because I'm like, yeah, that's what we do. Like I'm listening to you, and I'm listening intently, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, and I'm thinking about this, and oh, that reminds me about something happening outside. Like that's Gemini energy. Go, 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 think. And what can be useful, I think, for everybody. Again, another tip, right? I'm not saving them, dispersing them here. Well, sometimes we're having those great conversations in our head, but it's not always coming out loud. So one of my friends and I, we both have Gemini risings, and people laugh when we get together because we start conversations and never finish them. But her and I know exactly where we were going, and we follow each other's jumping. It's like people tell us it's like being at a tennis match. And it's like, where's that ball going? And nobody else knows, but we seem to know. It's that idea of rapid fire thoughts and different tunnels, different rabbit holes we're going to go down, but we're not choosing this rabbit hole and then backing up and doing this rabbit hole. We're doing them all at once. And so that idea of the mutable energy, the rapidity of the mind, of thinking, of thoughts, is part of the curiosity and the simultaneousness. Yeah, I'm making up my own words. Of it is, I think, very important to remember, because that's sometimes where we can get caught up. Yeah. So let's pull up the chart and let's look at some of the aspects happening to this beautiful Gemini new moon. All right. So in case in the editing you saw this, that's our cue to cut. So here we are. Here's our chart for those who are listening. I'm pulling up the chart for June 18th, 5:36 a.m. I set it for Greenwich, England, because when I was learning astrology, that was home turf territory. Now I guess it would be universal time. feel free to run your own chart. We had a question not too long ago about what chart was being used. So when I'm pulling up the chart, it's in Solar Fire. And I think when Monica, when you do it, are you doing Astro Gold?
Yes, I do Astro Gold. I
Yeah.
run Astro Gold on my Mac. Yeah.
Yeah. So different things. Okay, so we're looking at the new moon at 26 degrees of Gemini, and some of the aspects we wanted to make sure we talked about are, well, I don't have Juno on here. We don't put we do an Aries wheel and we try to keep it simple for y'all, and we don't have the asteroids on here. But if we were to plug Juno in, she would be conjunct. Um, we've also got a square. So here's the move my cursor. So here's our lovely new moon with Juno. We see that there is a square, pretty tight, to Neptune at 27 of Pisces. And we have a trine that is out of sign at the moment. That late degree of Gemini energy is making a trine to Saturn at 7 Pisces and a trine to the South Node at 2 Scorpio. And I think it's worth noting, I'm going to start there and then we can kind of unpack the soupy mess together. I think it's that trine is really important. Monica pointed it out to me. And as I looked at it, we're dealing with trine energy right now of air and water. But on the 21st to 22nd, just a few days from this new moon, we're going to have that sun go into Cancer, and it will be a trine in water. It'll be full on in sign. So there's this energy right now of air and water that's going to be moving into water. And so to me, that says something about this is sort of the questioning period, but this can also be the thinking. This could be the analyzing. Remember, trines are where energy flows easily, effectively, and so there can be some hiccups, I think, right now because Saturn often is teaching us when to say no. Saturn's teaching us how to have form, how to give structure. We've talked a lot about Saturn and Pisces being giving structure to our dreams, the creating the vision. And it can be challenging because with Pisces energy, we can sometimes get too lost in emotion or fantasy or water. The South Node we've talked at length about throughout the last year and a half as it's been transiting through Scorpio, this energy of what are those last little tendrils of fear, of conditioning, of what I want to hold on to, of what I want to control, that what is that last little thing I don't want to release or let go of? That I've been working on through the South Node transiting in Scorpio. And if we put that together, this energy is flowing of I'm ready to create, but I still have something stopping me. It's probably something of my own creation. I don't feel safe. Again, feeling energy, emotion energy can be flowing rather than logic. And here comes this air energy. So I think this is a great time to say to ourselves, okay, let me step out of myself for a moment. Let me let me look at this. Let me collect information. What do I want to do? What am I afraid to do? Let's go down those simultaneous rabbit holes and see where it leads, knowing that in a few days the emotions may take over. So not questioning why I feel a certain way, but questioning how can that maybe changing that why into a how. Ask yourself, how can these emotions, this intuition, because that often runs with the emotions, this drive, which often is tied up with our emotions, how can this help me to move past the self-created impasse? How can this help me to create my reality? Yeah, I'm getting pretty philosophical with it, but I just love this idea of we've got air and water, and in a few days, it's all going to be water. It feels like we're at the dam to, a river that has been dammed up, and pretty soon that dam is going to open and that water is going to flow into the lake. That's the image that I keep getting.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's a powerful image, especially with the Gemini squaring the Neptune. So there is this tension for me, at this new moon, there's this tension between, our Piscean Neptunian dreams and vision. And, do we have enough data to follow those dreams? Do we have enough information? Neptune and Pisces can be very foggy, very mystical, very mysterious, but it also can create illusion and delusion, right? I don't know if that's a word even, but it's this kind of idea of mirage in a desert, when we think we see something, but it's not quite there yet. And I think that tension between Gemini and Pisces can create that. We think we see the vision. We think we want to manifest that. We think there's this beautiful, rich, rich place in a desert. And the quicker, the closer we get to that point, that dry air of desert just shows us, no, it was just in our heads. It was just a mirage in front of our eyes. And I think this is kind of the energy of this new moon. What is it that we are trying to believe so much that we are losing our own mental faculties? I always believe that part of our spiritual life, or part of our dreams, and making those dreams come true, is being logical, is actually bringing them into, or filtering them through our own Mercury, through our own faculties, and then grounding them. Otherwise they will always stay within that kind of astral realm of not having a form and just floating there and just being those beautiful visions that we have, but never actually grounding them. I mean, for me, this is very much of what artists do. They go into that Neptunian space, they see all those beautiful things, and then through mercurial things, through their own, from very Gemini, through their own hands and skills, and they communicate that vision and then make it a real, whether in sculpture, as a movie, as a music, as a painting. And I think this is the new moon when we need to ask ourselves, I have this vision, I have this dream, I've dreamed about it since I was 5 years old. What do I need practical to make choice? What choices do I have for that dream? What two roads, or am I on a crossroad at this time? What are the two options that maybe I have? And with that trine, like we said, with Saturn and the South Node, then can be, a fear, deep down fear of not meeting those dreams, or worse, of meeting them and then us not being good enough, and then having that dream overpowering us, or that dream not living up to what is in our head, And with Saturn in Pisces as well, we're trying to give the structure to our dreams. Again, this is another layer to that, just from Saturnian perspective. So Saturn is trying to give perspective to, the foundation and a structure to that spiritual vision quest that we might want to have. But Saturn is also station retrograde. It will go back soon, over the summer, and it will ask us the same question. And I think this is the new moon that starts. On the surface, it looks very calm, doesn't it? Like when I look at this chart, it looks very calm and very pleasant. But when you dive deeper, it's like, okay, there is this South Node in Scorpio that talks about my fears. Have I gathered all the data to deal with my fears? Do I need to talk them through? Is this a time of going to a specialist, therapist or psychotherapist, or maybe I just need to talk them through with a friend and have a heart-to-heart? And, do I look at the mastery, Saturn, at the mastery, at my expertise, at the structures that I'm putting around my visions, around my dreams, around the things that my heart desire, and can I build them? And Saturn will be going over that twice. It will go back. It's already been through that road. It will go back in the retrograde motion, and then it will come back again. So we will have another two times when the Saturn will move over the same ground, to ask ourselves the same questions. And I think this is the new moon that starts that conversation, that starts this summer of retrograde, and start the conversation of, if I want to have I keep going back to the dream. If I want to have that big dream, if I want to believe in that world that I'm creating in my dreams, in my head, what is it that I'm doing from a practical, intellectual, every point of view, Saturnian point of view, to have them then grounded and coming through in a material way. Again, it's Gemini. I can feel, and we've mentioned that on a podcast before, that if you haven't seen it, look at some of the new moon podcasts. I don't know what is it, but we tend to tune into this energy and very much talk about the new moon from the space of that energetical archetype. So I can tell that today, Gemini, we're going with the air of Gemini and bringing the pictures and talking a little bit all over the place. But I am really hoping that the metaphor and the information that we're sharing will have will resonate with you all.
And that's the power of the archetypal energy, right? I mean, when we're talking about the planets and the signs, like these are archetypes that live within us and around us and move through us. And so it makes sense that we start focusing and talking about one and it comes forward. I'm feeling the same way. I'm feeling extremely, in touch with Gemini. I'm feeling that air kind of flow, the breeze, the moving to and fro. And with that, I'm going to throw in that one of the quotes that keeps rattling in my brain ever since Saturn went into Pisces is this amazing quote of never allow the distance between your dream and reality stop you. And I think that is because I think that's one of the challenges of the Saturn and Pisces is it's easy to feel like I'm either or. Saturn says, I must build something concrete and structured and reality. And Pisces says, I must dream the big dream and see where it could go and have the fantasy and the vision and have that flow. And how do I get them to work together? Can often be the challenge, and it can feel like I've heard a lot of people say since Saturn entered Pisces recently that, it feels like I'm trying to, build a house on stilts in a swamp and it's going to sink. Well, how about we just decide to build that house next to the lake or next to the swamp, have the view and not be like, in other words, how do we get them to work together? And some of this is, I think, important that we embrace both. It isn't either I'm going to be logical and reality based or I'm going to be a visionary. I have a vision to motivate me in the direction I want to go. I have the parts of me that know how to create the roadmap of how to get there and working them together. And I'm thinking that with this beautiful trine energy that we were talking about, well, perhaps this is an opportunity for a little bit of mental clarity and mental objectivity that Gemini can bring in without squashing the dream, like seeing things a little more not objective in terms of I'm going to clear out my feelings. No, 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 no. How about we get objective in I step out and I see what is calling to me and I see what resources I have and we're surveying, right, all the pieces of that jigsaw puzzle so that we can figure out later on, okay, what pieces do I need to develop? So I kind of feel like this is a really exciting moment. And the fact that Juno is also here, right? We mentioned when we started breaking out the aspects that Juno's conjunct the sun and the moon in Gemini. And to me, that plays a real strong, important role because she's not an asteroid I think of as going here or there or anywhere. She tends to be, I'm not moving until we have a clear course that you are committed to, seeing it through. She, to me, is the queen of heaven. She's the queen of the mountaintop. And if you're not willing to climb this mountain to get to where I am, I will wait until you are ready before I'm going to work with you. When I work with her, that's often the discussions we have. And so I think this is a really prime moment to stop in the push-pull of logic versus intuition or dream or visionary energy. This is a moment to pause and stop and remember, why am I doing this? Why is this calling me? Why is this my vision? What is happening? And am I willing to commit my energy and my time, very Saturnian words, am I willing to commit them to this dream, to this vision? And if not, that's okay. Then let me go find what I am willing to commit to. And so it's almost like here's a moment to kind of just pause and remember why we are on this trek, this journey we started for ourselves. whatever that journey is for you with your Saturn and Pisces energy. And let's make sure that we got everything, all the tools we need in our backpack before we start climbing up that mountain. And if this isn't the trail that I want to take up the mountain, that's okay. Let's go find the trail that I do want to take, but let's make sure we can stay the course.
Yeah. I do feel like this is also the moon. Like I said, the first impression of this new moon was, okay, that's a lovely, gentle new moon. It's Gemini, it's curious, it's interesting. Usually Gemini has that kind of lightness and lightheartedness around them. But I'm also thinking that this is the moment where things shift. So the beginning of the year, we had most of the planets going direct. So we had this kind of really strong pull of energy. Things were happening really quickly. I had a lot of people saying, oh my God, January, February, March, it just went so quick and things were happening so quickly. The second half of the year, we will have most of the planet in retrograde motion. And it starts around now. So we have Saturn that is stationing to go into retrograde motion. Couple days later, after this new moon, Venus will go into her pre-shadow stage, which means she will go through she will follow the road until she'll stop and then backtrack all the way to this very point. So she will be covering the road 3 times. She'll go forward, then she'll stop, she'll move backwards, then she'll stop and she'll move forward again. Obviously not literally, but this will be what we'll be seeing in the sky. And there will be a lot of planets in the second half of the year, a lot of planets in the summer, and then August, September, that will be in that retrograde motion. So I feel like this is the moment just before the summer solstice when we're slowing down, when that kind of energy of all the planets pushing us forward to that summer solstice point, suddenly, the second half of the year, they will be pulling us back and say, okay, maybe we ran all those 6 months before, maybe we ran a little bit too quickly and covered this ground too quickly. And now we need to stop and go back and revisit, re-edit, rethink the structure, revisit our desires, and so on and so on. So I do feel like this is the point where the new moon, when we can gather the information from the past 6 months in preparation for all those retrograde stuff happening. And we can look at, anything really, from the structures in our spiritual life, in our dream life, the Saturn in Pisces, to our desires in Leo, to our values. Jupiter will go retrograde as well. And we have opportunity to gather that information at this new moon, to have it easier when we need to get reacquainted with that information, re-edit, rethink, restructure, and so on.
Beautifully said. And then we also have, as you mentioned, that Venus is in her pre-shadow, but we also have, she's conjunct Mars. She and Mars are making a lovely trine. So she's at 11 Leo, Mars is at 16 Leo. They're making a lovely trine to Chiron, which is in the other fire sign of Aries. It's hanging out at 19 degrees of Aries. And in the middle is the lunation, right, making a sextile to both of them. And I just love this idea of, so with the trine to Saturn, we talked about the energy of air and water. Now we have this energy of air and fire. And anyone who's ever built a fire knows that the more air you put into it, the more that fire can grow and build and go. And so what is it that's growing, that's building? I think whenever you have planets touching Chiron, there's some type of, I'm getting in touch with old pain, but I'm bringing healing forward. Chiron being in Aries is significant because right now there's a lot of us doing some personal work or depth kind of work around getting in touch with myself, where I've lost me to fill in the blank, to whatever it is that I've sacrificed myself on behalf of. And Mars being the ruler of Aries, brings some energy here. I think it's about reclaiming some fun, passion, and joy of Leo and bringing that into the work, the personal work that I'm doing. Is it really work? Is it a struggle, or am I having fun? You know, it's not, it's often I hear people say, get in touch with your inner child. And all of us start shaking our head, going, oh, but she's traumatized, she's wounded, she's hurt. No, no, no. All I meant was play, however you
Mm.
define it. So this to me is sort of, can we find the joy? Can we remember the beauty that we find in ourselves and in the world? Venus and Mars and Leo. Let's flirt with life. Joie de vivre. Let's romance life and the world or other people or whatever it is that just makes our heart space feel shiny and bright. And can we shine some of that light back onto ourselves? Chiron and Aries. Can we bring healing? Can we remember the joy of being a spiritual being, having a human experience, and that it's not always about the work that we have to do or the obstacle we have to overcome. Sometimes that obstacle was simply the universe saying, stop, pause, celebrate the now,
Mm.
right? And then, of course, we're having all this happen with that new moon sextiling both sides. So I feel like this is a momentary pause, reflect, enjoy, uncover, but celebrate where we're at and what we're doing. And I think as Venus is getting ready to go retrograde, we will find next month in July, when she's full on in her retrograde motion, we may find ourselves revisiting some of these themes about where we have the joy or aren't, seizing the joy. So seize the day, seize the moment.
Beautifully said.
Anything else speaking to you from this chart?
I don't think so. I think I would just go straight to the tips. I know we kind of shared some ideas already during the podcast, but I think one thing that I will be doing this new moon, it's very much preparing for the next half of the year. I'm not saying that every new moon in Gemini does that, but it feels a little bit like that turning point between the new moon in Gemini and then, like Kimberly said, Sun moving to Cancer, and we are going to go into summer solstice. For me, this moon will be an opportunity to gather the information. I've been on a run for so long, since the beginning of the year. Have I lost something? Was I so quick and, rushing so much that I actually lost something on the way? So I'll be working with that Neptune and the new moon tension and thinking, okay, what are the vision that I, set for myself at the beginning of the year? Kind of a little bit revising that, what is the vision? What is the dream that I have for 2023? We're coming up to a summer solstice, which is the full moon energy of the year. It's the blossoming of the year. So I will be thinking and reflecting at the new moon, what is the vision that I prepared for 2023? In that rush and that kind of really dynamic energy of the first half of the year, have I done everything that I wanted, or have I lost something on the way because I was rushing? And if I have, can I gather all those pieces? I might not rush to review them yet, but I will be gathering and reflecting on what else can I do? So I can prepare for those retrograde movements and go, okay, well, when the Venus will move into retrograde, I can revive and review this part that I've rushed past. And when Saturn will obviously is now going into retrograde, I can do this part. So I think I will be working with that tension between what is my dream? Have I gathered enough information, and do I have enough options? That's another thing that I love with Gemini. Gemini gives us options, gives us different roads, different paths. So have I had a chance to really check what are my options? What are the paths? Not necessarily making a decision yet, but making sure I see all of them, making sure that I can take a step back and reflect at the new moons, like, am I just seeing with a blinder on my eyes? Am I just seeing one way and a highway, or can I actually have a look and see other different options for me available at the new moon in Gemini? Is this piece of information that might change my mind about something or alter some of my plans? So this is what I'll be sitting and reflecting on.
Nice. Um, my tip, as I alluded to earlier, has to do with what is my personal why. And it came to me, actually, this work that I'm doing came to me in a dream recently. So in my youth, I was a backpacker, and um, I had a dream that I was, a teenager, and I'm preparing for the hike, the expedition. And I got the backpack and I'm putting things in, and here comes my mother, and she's like, "So why are you going on this trip?" Because that's where the group is going. The leaders have organized it, and I'm just going because it's there. And, well, why are you taking this trail? Because that's the mountain we're climbing and that's where we want to go. Um, but why do you want, it was why do you want to go there? Why this? Why? And finally, I turned around in a moment of really anger, typical, teenage angst, anger, and it's like, because my favorite place to hike was always in New Hampshire. I'm like, because that's where I feel connected to the earth and to spirit, and I feel like, one with my soul. And when I woke up, I realized I'm doing a lot of work in my world without remembering why I'm doing that work. That's what it felt like to me. It's like doing the work and it's exciting, and but that ball has started rolling. The momentum has taken over. And now it's like I'm just following that inertia energy of go, go, go. And so I feel like for me, the tip I'm working on with this new moon is to stop and pause and just ask myself, what is my personal why about whatever the
Mm,
work is I'm choosing to do in the moment? What is my, and if I don't know what my why is, then asking myself those questions of why this work? Why this work now? Why in this time? Like, be the little 2-year-old
mm,
who goes around and you say, that's the sky. Why? It's blue. Why? Well, I don't know. Well, let's sit and just, whether that's through journaling, whether that's through dream work, whether
mm,
that's through taking a bath, like we don't, the power I don't think is in the answer. The power is in stopping and remembering why I feel
mm.
connected to the work I'm doing, the dream I'm pursuing, the course that I'm currently taking. Why am I doing it? Because that's going to help us be committed to seeing the work through. All
I'll be
right.
asking that question in my journaling. Thanks for that.
All right. So on the 17th or 18th of June, I expect all of us to be sitting there going, why? Put your why in the comment section below. If you are on YouTube, or if not, come over and check us out on YouTube. I would love to know what your personal why is, and remind me to put mine in. I will share what I come up with. And of course, again, if you haven't already subscribed, please do. It really helps us out. And be sure to hit that bell so you'll get notified when our next podcast is released for the full moon on July 3rd. I guess that's it. So bye. Have a wonderful 2 weeks, and we'll see you in the comments. Thank you for joining us in this week's Astro Chat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.